Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the EU's potential move to order a vaccine export block, how it's hypocritical for Boris Johnson's government to complain for a couple of reasons really, why it's moronic for Brexiteers to either cheer or be furious about it, and why it may just play into the Conservatives' hands for all their potentially mock anger. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So this morning, the headlines weren't full of royal arguments. No. No, instead it contained actual news. Now, what news could have been so important that British newspapers actually decided to report on it? Well, the Brexit vaccine wars, of course. This is very much about Brussels possibly talking about an export ban on the coronavirus vaccine. EU leaders are meeting to discuss this. Are they in their rights to do this? Not really, no. Does Boris Johnson or any Brexiteer have any right to complain? Hell no. Let me explain. So, as of about a week ago, the latest figures showed that the EU had exported 42 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to other countries, including about 10 million to the UK. However, the UK in return has not exported a single dose. Not one vial of vaccine has been exported from the UK to the EU, or indeed any number of other countries, yet the government claims that we don't have an export block in place. Now, technically that's not a lie, as in there isn't officially a government order blocking exports. However, the government made sure that producers in the UK wouldn't export any. So in reality, there is an effective block. And we can see that the evidence for that is in the fact we have not exported a single thing. And what are we going to claim? Oh, no one's asked for any. Absolute nonsense. So although there isn't an official block, you can't point to a document and go, oh. The way the government worked with the producer in the UK in terms of their contracts made sure that not a single dose was exported. And yet we're still quite happy to import them from places we won't export to. And it's as simple as that. The EU has exported tens of millions around the world, including 10 million to us, not a single one from us. Now imagine this was the other way around. Imagine that we'd exported millions of doses to the EU, that the EU were not exporting any to us, and that the EU were gloating about how much better their vaccine rollout was compared to the UK. The likes of the Daily Telegraph, would they be going, oh, well, fair enough. I mean, we should have done the same thing, shouldn't we? No, they'd be going ballistic, wouldn't they? Brexiteers would be raging at the duplicity of the EU, wouldn't they? Of course they would. And if they try claiming that they would not, try asking them then to justify the fact that the EU has sent us 10 million doses and we haven't sent any to them. Will they condemn our behaviour? I'd be mightily surprised. And if they don't, they're hypocrites. It's as simple as that. If ever you complain about the way someone else is doing a thing, if you put the shoe on the other foot and they won't condemn that, they're hypocrites. But hypocrisy is only part of the story. They're also extremely dim. Because here's the thing. Brexiteers in the UK are currently going on about how unfair this is from the EU, and again using it as justification for Brexit. But they're actually demonstrating the opposite. Before we left the EU, Remainers constantly argued that the EU was too powerful to take on. Leavers constantly argued that we held all the cards, and besides, the EU was breaking up. Our leaving would start a mass breakup of the bloc. Well, which one's turned out to be true then? Because if we are complaining about the behaviour of the EU, but I don't see anything in the report saying what we're going to do about it other than get the Prime Minister to beg Brussels not to do it, then these people are admitting that the EU are too powerful. After all, when the UK is doing something the EU don't like, breaking an international treaty, for example, they're not just whining about it, they're doing something about it, and it will not be pleasant for us. And actually, potentially what's happening this week could be an example of that, but I'll do that towards the end. So what are we going to do if the EU goes ahead with this? Bugger all, that's what, bugger all. And we cannot produce the vaccine ourselves. Remember, you people may think, well, we've got production facilities in the UK. It's not even just that they can't produce enough just for us. We get raw materials from around the world. In fact, the current problems with supply, there's a bit of a shortage problem regardless of what the EU do. It's very much linked to that supply chain. Nothing to do with what the EU has done, because actually at the moment it hasn't done anything apart from still exporting to us. But if the EU decided to do what the UK government have done, completely prioritise supplies for their own citizens, then that would hit our vaccination rollout. That would represent both a problem and an opportunity for the Conservatives. Depends how it plays out. The problem is that the government planned their rolling back of the lockdown restrictions alongside an expected rollout of the vaccine. Now, if this is delayed, then the numbers will not back up their decision to ease restrictions. I mean, they'll still do it anyway. Conservative MPs do not seem to be entertaining the notion of Boris Johnson breaking his promise to them that the lockdown will be gone by summer. But Professor Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, has already said that he expects an upsurge in cases as the lockdown is scaled back. And that was before this potential extra vaccine shortage became something to worry about. Now, when you consider that the number of new cases per day that we're getting in the UK is, although way down on where it was at the second peak, significantly above the level where the government scientific experts last September said we needed a second lockdown. So it's still high. And then you consider that it's not falling anymore, that rate has leveled off. So it's leveled off at a high position. Nowhere near as high as it was, but a high position. Can we really afford much of an upsurge? There may now come a point where the numbers become so bad that the government has no choice but to reimpose restrictions or delay the easing back of restrictions. It might not even be possible just to do it in labour areas this time either. Now that would be a huge political challenge for Johnson, because he promised his MPs that nothing would stop the intended timetable of easing out of lockdown. In fact, before this latest threat from the EU, when last week when it has been reported that there are problems with the supply chain and that was going to hit our availability of vaccine and slow us down, even then the government made it clear that would not affect the timetable of easing the lockdown. No. Despite the fact he'd promised the rest of us that he'd be guided by the data, not the dates. He also promised everyone that as restrictions were removed, they'd never be reimposed. In other words, it's only forwards, never backwards. We're never going backwards into restrictions ever again. Not just, immediately, ever again. Now, if this vaccine war puts him in the position of having to go against those questionable promises, it'd be politically very tough for him. Now, I can't say there's any inevitability about this, by the way. Obviously, we are heading towards summer. And, there is a possibility that the season will help us out there, as more people would be outside, lower risk of transmission, all the rest of it. So he may get away with it, in which case this situation could well be an opportunity. As I say, what this scenario highlights is exactly why we should never have left the EU. We had strength as part of the Union. The EU looks after their own, it backs their own. We were their own, backed us. But we are weak on our own. And that was just based on a basic Brexit. That was just the fundamental of Brexit. Given that the particular Brexit path we've trodden involves sticking two fingers up at everyone around us, we're especially weak. We are dependent upon countries who have their own self-interest, and we've been quite rude to them. But this is not how the narrative is playing out in the media. It's a them and us fortress theme going on. Another stick to beat the EU with, another useful distraction from the government's failures. So the next chapter of Conservative failure in our coronavirus misadventures will be blamed on the EU. And that's all Johnson really wants. He doesn't want to succeed, he doesn't care about that, that's effort. He just wants others to blame for his failures. It'll help him whip up anti-EU further, the media will be right on board with it, and it will help shore up his support for Brexit, even if it tears our economy apart. Brexit at the moment should be about as welcome as a fart in a wetsuit. But the fact that he can keep attacking the EU is allowing people to ignore the damage caused by it. It will help him continue the divisive nature of Brexit, even when Labour eventually has to make their policies on closer alignment with the EU more widely known. Of course, there is a flip side too. It will make it even more humiliating for him and us when we eventually have to back down. The Conservatives seem to be fairly sanguine about taking on one of the most powerful economic and political bodies in the world, and the global superpower right on our doorstep collectively, but they do not wish to set themselves up in opposition to the United States, quite the reverse. Yeah, this is what they are also doing. So politically, the situation could play into Johnson's hands. Certainly domestically, it can shore up his support, but it acts very much against our national interests because the EU are much more powerful than we are. It seems stupid to me to try and say otherwise. They have a larger population, more wealth, more natural resources, more land, more trade agreements. On what measure can you think of a single measure where anyone can try and claim that we are even equal to the EU without wrapping themselves in a flag, you know? And this does not bode well for the long-term future, because as long as we try and continue to set ourselves up in opposition to the EU, we will continue to suffer serious harm because there's no contest. In some ways, I'll be looking at the decision from the EU as a sign of their approach to the UK, because I'll tell you what's interesting. I saw a report that said, although an export block would delay our vaccination programme by 2 months, it would only boost the EU's by a single week. In other words, on a purely practical level, it's really not worth their while doing it. Given that it's a bit naughty, given that they shouldn't be doing it, it's not playing by the rules, it's really not worth it. They don't get much of a benefit. So if they do vote for it, it will be a purely political decision. Now, it may be political in terms of gain approval of their own citizens. It may well be that others in the EU, citizens of the EU, are looking at the situation going, why are we exporting to the UK? They're not exporting to us, and yet they're lording it over us how well they're doing. It may just be that. Or maybe it's an act to deliberately kick the UK in the shins. Now, if the latter, then it may indicate that whilst we behave as we do, particularly with like the Northern Ireland Protocol and so on, they are prepared to trip us up in a whole range of areas, that they may well make political decisions to frustrate us rather than help themselves, which will allow the papers to whip up the anti-EU further. And it's not exactly cutting off your nose to spite your face, really, because like I said, it's not worth it because it only boosts their vaccine programme by a week, but it still boosts it. It's not like they're harming themselves to harm us more. But yeah, in the UK, in the media, it will distract us from the damage of Brexit, but ironically will only invite even more Brexit destruction. Very unpleasant. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.